tonight, we're on chapter 9 of 15, so we are getting somewhere. I don't want you to feel like it's going to go forever. I want to, the more I mulled over this, the more it hit me that most of the examples that he talks about is the loyalty or disloyalty of a leader, and not so much like the friend relationship. So I don't want us to forget that even though the examples may talk a lot about a leader being disloyal, it's also about a relationship. Because I kept getting caught up in well, it's all about a leader. And, you know, a lot of it leans that way, and I don't want us to lose the part that is our relationships and loyalty within relationships. So that's my disclaimer today. So it's chapter 9, and the title of the chapter is that person on your side? It's the law of loyalty. So the first example that the author talks about is Helen Keller. Now we all know the story because has anybody not seen The Miracle Worker? About the Helen Keller, you have not seen The Miracle Worker?
Yeah, I know who she is, but I don't think I've seen that movie.
With Patty Duke?
Yeah, it's a very old movie.
Right, yes. I saw
and you get the gist of the relationship, and where the relationship between Helen Keller and her teacher, Anne Sullivan, starts. And the thing about Helen Keller you have to remember is that through everything, she overcame such enormous obstacles, because what it would take for you and I to get an education and to do the things that we do were even more difficult for her. And not only did she get her education and everything, she really contributed a lot to society, because she was the first person with a disability who truly was showing society that people with disabilities can contribute. So without her, a lot of things in our society a lot of people would be overlooked. So she contributed a lot. But for all that she did, she couldn't have done it without Anne Sullivan. So there's the relationship. If you've seen The Miracle Worker, you understand that Helen was deaf and blind, and Anne broke through that to get her communicative, okay? And then after that happened, just started teaching her, because she was really a smart person. Well, after the movie, the movie goes, she's still a child, she goes on to schools, different schools, to be educated, goes on to colleges, and this whole time Anne Sullivan goes with her. That is her companion to help her become educated. Some things I didn't know is that Helen ultimately lived with Anne and her husband. So Anne is married with her husband, and Helen lived with them. They traveled, Anne and Helen traveled throughout the United States. They traveled to like over 40 countries. Okay, here, my notes here. And I mean, over many, many years. Well, Anne Sullivan was older than Helen, and when her health was failing, she knew that she had to kind of do something to keep Helen taken care of. So she hired and trained a housekeeper to care for Helen. So when she passed, Helen would have someone there who could communicate to her and take care of her in the way she needed to be taken care of. Well, that right there is a really kind of a stunning amount of loyalty to another person. I mean, Anne Sullivan committed her adult life to Helen Keller. And honestly, to me, it would be at times very frustrating because her whole life is revolving around this other person, plus I'm married, and that had to be frustrating. There had to be easier teaching jobs that Anne Sullivan could have had. But her goal, yes, ma'am.
Was it Anne that got married or Helen?
Anne.
Oh, Anne got married. Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. I was thinking that you said it was Helen that got married, and I was like, ooh, okay.
So everything she did was to ensure that Helen reached her full potential. So as a teacher, she saw in Helen that there was great potential. And in this instance, it showed that her loyalty to Helen was this incredible force for good, and that's what loyalty can be in any relationship. So on one hand, you have the idea that loyalty is an incredible force for good. Like it can really make someone you're in a relationship with, it can really make that relationship very positive. On the flip side of that is betrayal. And we all know that if you have ever been betrayed by someone, it is one of the most hurtful, negative things that can happen within a relationship. Even if you're not really in a close relationship with someone, but if you feel betrayed, you are extremely hurt by it. So let's go back to our friend, King David. We're going to go back to him again because, he's a great example. We talked about him last week, but we have David, Uriah, and Bathsheba, okay? Now, when you think about it, you think, oh, all the betrayal that's involved in this whole thing. Well, honestly, David didn't betray Bathsheba. He didn't betray her at all. His downfall and his betrayal was his betrayal of Uriah. Okay, so even though we know that what David did with Bathsheba is wrong, we know that. When you talk to people about what he did, you have a conflict of, some people say, well, but he was a good man, he just made a mistake. And it's hard to see a biblical hero fail. And then you have other people who say, well, that makes me feel better because I can see that he was so great and he had his failings. I agree with the second part. He was a great man, but he was human and he had his failures in his life's journey. So if you look at him as like in a broad picture, he had followers and warriors who were in the military with him. They admired him, they respected him, they would risk their life in battle for him. Because when he was younger, he was right there in the midst of battle with them, right there, And these men were loyal because he was right there with them, because he seemed to be very loyal to them. And what we find out is in the situation with Uriah, he had the facade of being loyal, but he wasn't really loyal. And we'll talk a little bit about why later, but what it proved is that he looked like he was this leader who was loyal to his men. But when we look at what happened with Uriah, we can see that he was very disloyal to a very loyal follower. In the past in the past month or so, Pastor's been teaching us about the courts, right? And in court, if someone is murdered and it's first-degree murder, it means it's willful and premeditated, okay? The difference between like first degree, second degree, it's willful and premeditated. And so a lot of times we'll hear that we think someone should be charged with first-degree murder, but they have a problem the prosecutor might have a problem proving that it's willful and premeditated, okay? Because the other piece to that is sometimes there's what's called a crime of passion, and it's more spontaneous, and it's the result of extreme emotion. A lot of times they lean towards manslaughter, that kind of thing. So when you compare what David and Bathsheba had, that was a crime of passion. What he did wrong was a crime of passion. He was quick to respond to his emotions and his passion. But what happened between David and Uriah was first-degree murder because it was premeditated and very deliberate. Okay? All right. So when all of this plays out, Nathan the prophet in 2 Samuel, if you want your scripture, it's 2 Samuel 12, 9 through 15. Through Nathan the prophet, God pronounces a judgment on David. And when he does this, he mentions Uriah's name 3 times. So his judgment is put together in a way that mentions Uriah 3 times. Bathsheba is never really directly mentioned. She's mentioned as wife, very vaguely, 2 times. And what we see there is, and is something that Pastor has pointed out to us before, is that when the writers of the Bible put it all together, when they really wanted to emphasize something, there's the repetition over and over. And when God wants us to get something, it's repetition, so we don't miss the point. And especially if it's a person's name, because a lot of times he wants us to see the importance of that person. So in this judgment, the judgment is for what he did to Uriah, not his affair with Bathsheba, okay? So that literary device of, repetition to emphasize the importance of what he did, his disloyalty to Uriah. In 1 Kings 15:5, it's repeated again, and I'm going to quote this. It says, David had done what was right in the eyes, and this is the overall summary of David's life, okay? David had done what was right in the eyes of the Lord and had not failed to keep any of the Lord's commandments all the days of his life, except in the case of Uriah the Hittite. So right there, we see that although he was seen as loyal to the Lord's commandments and all of that, there's that little caveat at the end, but except in the case of Uriah. Okay, so what we see there is what was more important in that situation was the disloyalty that David showed Uriah. Okay, now here's where we getting into the disloyal leader. Okay, and honestly, as I talk about some of this, I'll bet you can think of people that you've either worked for or with, people that you can just see the personality traits, okay? Some leaders pursue positions of influence and authority for all the wrong reasons. Now we've seen that, people who just want that position that seems important for all the wrong reasons. They cause great pain and deeply wound those who have given their loyalty. They demand that loyalty, but they seem to constantly be hurting people along the way, okay? Now, if you've ever been, also don't forget in relationships, people who get into relationships for all the wrong reasons. This is, we talked about people who try to become friendly with someone because it makes them look good. We talked about that last week. And even though they're not committed to that relationship and they're not loyal to that relationship, there can happen betrayal, and that can again, cause great pain and deep wounds. And even though they do this, they're not always a totally bad person, as we see in David, but there's a vein of disloyalty that runs through an otherwise good heart. So it's hard to kind of decipher, like, is that a really bad person? Or are they disloyal? It's not a glaring, this person is evil. Usually it's usually a little harder to see until you see certain situations, the person in certain situations. So if you look at it in terms of, let's say, a couple examples would be, one would be a coach. And we talked about this a while back. I think Elder Marcia talked about the Penn State situation where the coach, who is more loyal to winning than he is the well-being of the students or the well-being of the program that he put together. He was more concerned about him and his status or his reputation than he was the reputation of the school or anything else. So his loyalty was to himself and not to anyone else affiliated to the team. Or the CEO of a company who is manipulative and has goals that they want to constantly climb that corporate ladder, and they want even when they get to the top, they want more. They want more acclaim. They want more benefits to being this important person. They want the feeling of power that they can use because they think it makes they think it makes them look good, and they use it to make themselves look good. So they kind of wield their power over people to make themselves look good. The author says this, and I agree, that disloyalty is not always easy to identify. It's not as clear cut as what David did to Uriah. It's not that clear cut all the time. It can be very subtle. And if you are trying to identify, is this person loyal in this relationship with me, or is this leader loyal to the cause, it may be so subtle that you just have a feeling that something's not right. Something feels a little uncomfortable. There's no open disrespect or dishonesty. You can't see anything wrong. And they speak the language of loyalty. And that's where it gets a little deceptive, because they say all the right things, but they don't always do all the right things, if that makes sense. They say the right words, but they don't always do the right things. So like in the case of David, in the beginning, he was doing the right things and he got tired. He thought he'd take a rest. You know, he sent the men off to be warriors, and he was lazing around the castle, the palace, doing whatever, scoping out Bathsheba. There are some insights that the author gives as into a disloyal leader. And I want you to think about the insights, but also be able to flip it to look at what, and know that the opposite is what a loyal leader would look like. So I'm going to talk about disloyal, but also keep your mind thinking about what a loyal leader would look like. And there we go. Okay, number one, a disloyal leader holds others to a standard he is not personally willing to make. So this is someone who expects others to do things that they're not willing to do themselves. I always laugh because whenever I hear something like this, I always think of a time when the director of our department and I were cleaning toilets together. Oh, well, that's not our job, but the toilets needed to be cleaned. And that's the kind of thing that you see in a loyal leader. A disloyal leader would tell you to clean the toilets, but wouldn't necessarily help you do it. Double standard. They want everyone to follow the rules. You have to follow the rules, but I don't have to. So the people within the department may have to follow the rules, but I would bend, might bend the rules a little bit. A loyal leader would lead with integrity and by example, whereas the disloyal leader in this situation, he's just going to tell you what to do, he or she. Number 2, a disloyal leader does not fight for or with those who support and fight for him. Okay, so like I said, David in his early life was a warrior, and he was out there with his military doing the fighting. And then he made that increased the loyalty they had for him, because they felt like, well, he's willing to get out here and fight with us, right? Works for me. But later in his life, yeah, he sends the guys out to fight. He don't want to go out anymore. They're risking their lives. He's at the palace. Now, he might have had a good reason to be there, but ultimately he gets in trouble for it. And if you've ever seen someone who, I guess, an example would be someone who's just, they want you to always fight for their cause. But if you say, but I have this cause, and and this is more relationship, but I have this thing I feel very strongly about, can you support me in this? Not asking that you fight at the same passion level that I do, but can you support me? And you'll see that they don't. No, that's your cause, or that's your passion, or whatever, but not mine. That's another way to see that one. The third one is, a disloyal leader is more concerned about self-interest than the corporate purpose. So when David was when David was sending people out to the military, he are out to fight these wars, he said, and when he was out there doing this, he believed the same thing. He did the same thing. He believed and stressed the importance of abstaining from sex during military campaigns, right? But yet, but he didn't feel like it applied to him if he wasn't really in the heat of battle. And when Uriah came home and he said to Uriah, I want you to go home to your wife, do whatever. And Uriah knows that this is the expectation that David has for his military. He doesn't sleep with Bathsheba, so therefore it doesn't help David's cause, because that's how loyal Uriah was. But David didn't understand that Uriah kept that loyalty. This is how you want me to be. This is how I'm going to be. But David didn't hold that loyalty that strong, okay? In this situation, loyalty does not sacrifice people for personal gain, but disloyalty does. It's about personal gain in this situation. What do I get out of it personally? Do I get the promotion and leave everyone in my department behind? If I'm in a relationship with someone, does this make me, more important in the relationship because I have all the, I make the most money in my marriage or whatever. And instead of looking at, it's the corporate purpose, it's the group purpose. Corporate is using that word not just as a corporation, but as a group and a team. Number 4, a disloyal leader feels no sorrow over the loss of someone significant and shows no appreciation for that person's past contributions. In this, David never really, using David as an example again, he never really acknowledges or appreciates what Uriah did after his death. He never said, Uriah was this great warrior, no. It doesn't look like he did. Now, we don't know everything, but it just doesn't seem like he really cared about that. A disloyal leader in this situation would be completely unaffected when they lose someone valuable. If someone quits, if someone moves on, there's no recognition for what they contributed to the team. So like in like a department, somebody moves on to a different department or they're gone now, too bad. There's no, a lot of times when you leave, they'll throw a little party for you. Nope, we don't have money for that. So they're unaffected because it doesn't affect them, even though that person may have greatly contributed to what they personally gain. It's irrelevant. Someone else will take that person's place. So it's the whole idea that someone else will take that person's place for my self gain. Even when a member of the team needs to be let go, a loyal leader will celebrate their accomplishments and contributions. So a loyal leader would, even though they gave an example of this, friends of the authors who had some people who started in this ministry with him, it was a man and a woman who worked with this man. And they worked on this ministry together. They did all this stuff. They kept building and building and building. It was very successful. But over time, the man and the woman started to be argumentative. They started to cause some problems, stirring up trouble, that kind of thing. And by this time, they have a board of I don't know, trustees or something. And the board decided, you know what? We can move on with this ministry without this couple. They really need to go away. And so what they did is they very gently said to the people, we're going to let you go. But in the next, after they let them go, they celebrated their contributions. So when it comes to a personnel matter, you can't say exactly what happens, but you can say to the rest of the ministry, these people contributed and were thankful for what they did, and we're glad they were here for us, and they're not going to be with us anymore, and we're going to miss them. Now that's a loyal leader, because they see that even though there was a problem in the end, initially there was a lot of contribution that these people made along the way. Okay. One of the things that he talked about, which I really liked, and Pastor, I want you to make note of this, because I think it's a great idea. We don't have enough people in the ministry yet, but I think it's a great idea, because it's a way to reel people in without really knowing they're being reeled in. In their ministry, every November, they open up the option for anyone who wants to sign up, re-up, or resign from any committee or ministry within their church. So if I say I want to continue to be on the praise team, I will just say I'm going to re-up on the praise team. Okay, every November we just confirm that's true. But let's say there's somebody who would like to join the praise team. Well, every November they could step forward and say, I would like to sign up, or I would like to be on the hospitality committee, but that comes up every November, okay? So then people can move around in committees and that kind of thing, and it's a yearly commitment. So every year they're reminded of their commitment. Every year it is opened up for other people to step in. So it's not so informal that it's like, when do I want to say that I want to get more involved in the church? Well, the church just made it very open and clear. Every November you do. You say, I want to be more involved. Here's your opportunity. Here's our list of committees. Here's what they do. What would you like to be a part of? And then if there's someone who says, you know, I'm just going through life and I can't do it. I can't do what I've been doing. It's time for me to step aside. every November. It's very easy. And that's not to say you can't any other time, but it makes it a very even breaking point. And there's no questions asked. Where did so-and-so go? Well, it's November. They decided to step down for a season. So they get the option open to everyone in the congregation. Now, I don't know how they vet people to make sure they fit the ministry, or if they sign up for too much, or I don't know how they do that. But it seems to me that we so often have people who want to be involved, they don't know how, and they don't know when, and they don't know when to say something and who to say it to. And this just seemed kind of very structured. What they also do is celebrate those who feel they must step aside. So they just have a small little thank you after church for those people who resign. So I liked it. And I think once we get a little bit bigger, I think it makes it a very clean way for people to say, oh, this is when I can say, this is when I can get the information I need about what kinds of things are happening and where I might want to get involved. And here's the date my commitment starts. And if I don't like it after the year, I can back out. So anyway, I liked it. Onward and forward. Loyal leaders are, in that same vein, loyal leaders are saddened by those who have been important to them and are quick to express appreciation to those who have helped and supported them. And that's what this whole celebration after they step down is. Only those who are disloyal on some level can watch others leave with no sorrow or no recognition of past benefits to the relationship. And that is just overall. If there's just no, I just don't care, then there's some disloyalty there. We can't totally avoid disloyal people. They happen. They're there. I mean, there are leaders that are disloyal. There are people who are in relationships with us who seem somewhat disloyal. But like I said before, it's really hard to identify traits because it's not always clear cut. So I'm going to give you a few things to look for that will would kind of hopefully get you to looking a little deeper at a person if you see something like this happening. Okay, here we go. These are kind of traits of disloyal people. Disloyal people want what they want so badly that they do not care who gets hurt as they pursue it. So there's a lack of care and concern for others in the small ways, even before it starts to really show in the big ways, if that makes sense. It's a lack of responsibility for anyone else. It's I need to get what I want, and I don't really care who else it hurts. And like I said, it starts with the small things and it starts to grow. So if you start to get that funny feeling like this person really just doesn't seem to care that other people are hurting as they move forward, then there's something in that we should look for. And they don't care when people are wounded by them. They don't care that they've hurt someone. They may show some concern, but not a lot. It's like, yeah, they're hurt, and then get over it. You know, so it may be that's where it starts to get a little muddy and harder to see, because they may show a little concern, but not really sincere. Second one is disloyal people violate the principles for which you stand. So we talked before about how you want someone to be in relationship with you that you agree on certain principles, okay? Especially when you're talking about someone you want close to you. You want them to, if a person, if a person's going to deny the principles of God, let's say, okay, then that to me right there is a big red flag, because then that means everything else is up for grabs, because it doesn't matter what we need to agree upon for a healthy relationship, because right there you've just said it's irrelevant. If God doesn't come first and you're all about yourself first, there's that disconnect for me. So they really feel like it's easy for them they can easily violate principles that we have already talked about that are crucial to healthy, loyal relationships. If you want loyal people in your life, look first to see if they're faithful to God, because that's loyalty, it's faithfulness. It's if they're faithful to God, then they have the ability to be loyal to others as well. The third one is disloyal people are not willing to give everything for a cause that is vital to you. Now, if it's vital to them, perfect, it's perfectly fine. Now, this one, I don't want us to misconstrue that a person isn't necessarily disloyal if they don't have the same priorities as you, if they can still encourage and support you. Okay, that's okay, because we are all different. We all have different priorities, and we all have different purposes and that kind of thing. But if there's no support level there, then that's where that becomes a problem. So they're not willing to put their needs aside to support your cause for any little bit at all. There's a difference in priorities, and to the degree that it makes them disloyal, because they see no profit for themselves. And that's the difference. It's not profiting me. Why would I want to help you? And when a person is loyal, it makes your priorities their priorities to some degree. Everyone has their own priorities, but if you're in a relationship with someone, you would have similar priorities, and you would want to encourage and support that other person's priorities, even if they're not your own personal ones. And he says, and just like I just said, be careful. It doesn't mean everyone should have your priorities. It just means they have to be willing to support yours, and at the same time you would support theirs. And that's that give and take of loyalty. Now, we have one PowerPoint slide, and it is called The Qualities of People Who Are Likely to Be Loyal. I'm going to bring it up here in just a second. Okay, y'all see that? Okay. So the qualities of people who are likely to be loyal are: loyal people honor and abide by the standards they set for the people around them. So they have the same expectations of themselves as they do others. Loyal people fight for and with those who are dedicated to their causes or visions. They assume just as much risk or more than others do. So they're willing to clean the toilets as well. That's my thing. Loyal people elevate the purpose and interests of a family, group, or organization above self-interests. And that's kind of what I was talking about. So if you're part of a team or a ministry, your loyalty is that you would elevate the purpose of that ministry or that purpose of a family or a group that you're a part of over their own self-interests. And that's that loyal person. Loyal people grieve genuinely over the loss of friends and supporters and truly appreciate the contributions those people have brought to their lives. So if somebody goes missing or somebody leaves a ministry or somebody, then there truly is that acknowledgement of what that person contributed to the cause or to their life. Loyal people care more about others than about their own goals, projects, or pursuits. This one sounds a little dangerous to me because you need to somehow balance that so that you don't lose yourself in someone, to me. But we may talk about this one a little bit. Loyal people affirm and support your values and principles, and loyal people are willing to invest as much as possible in the things that are important to you. So there's balance in everything, but these are the qualities of a loyal person that you're going to look for in a loyal. And like I said, a lot of this talked about loyal leadership, but what we're getting at is someone who is loyal to any kind of relationship we're a part of. Questions, comments, how do you feel about any of these? Did any of these, like that one that I sort of disagreed with or want to temper a little? I'll leave it up so we can reread them.
Yeah, that one, I don't want to be no pushover. You know, you don't want anybody to walk over you either.
Yeah, that one kind of struck me that way. Because to me, you would have your own, your own goals and projects and pursuits, and there would have to be a balance there, or you wouldn't have.
Because you would lose
yourself
in someone else's life or whatever. You know, if you're caring more about them, you know, that brings to mind like the wife who works and puts her husband through college or medical school or something. That's good, but after he's done going to medical school and he's a doctor, is her turn, you know. Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I think there's that one. That's the one that kind of made me, I don't know, feel like there had to be a balance there.
Yeah.
The rest of them made sense to me. And basically this, I think, summarized the chapter really well. It was the last points he made in the chapter. But I think they really, because he talked a lot about disloyalty in the chapter when you're reading, and it was a little depressing because it was always about the negative. And when he ended with this, I felt a little bit better about it. So, anyone else?
Now that I'm reading this again, it could also mean that you're not putting yourself, I'm not thinking of the right word, over other people, like putting your projects above other people. This is why I shouldn't talk.
Well, but this is a hard one, Marcia. This is one that I was stumbling over, because I get what you're saying, that maybe you should
maybe, yeah, like maybe he's meaning
you
like
care more about other people's stuff than your own. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, you should care about your own stuff too.
Right.
Where's that balance? And that's why I said I didn't quite get the feeling that there was a balance there. And that you can be loyal to someone and really care about their goals and their projects and things without laying yours aside forever, or you would never accomplish any of your own passions and pursuits. That's where I started to struggle with it. And not to put yours above theirs, but to say that there's a balance there somehow, especially if you're in a relationship or you're a couple or you're in a ministry together, that you would have to balance some of that out.
So I was thinking that maybe this, that scripture that says, and I think you just mentioned this earlier tonight, that says that something to the effect of putting others before you. I can't think
There's a
of
passage that says to esteem others more highly
that.
than ourselves.
That's the one I'm talking about. It's esteem others more highly than yourself. And so that's what I think about when I read that one there. And I don't know if that means that it's like, I mean, it says that the loyal people care more about others than about their own goals. So you could care about someone else. I think it's more like, so just think about, there was a fire. It was just on the news today. It was a fire, and the lady threw her child out the window, and sacrificed her own life. Now she didn't make it out of the fire, but and I think it was a football player or something that caught the baby. So that's putting that child before her own life. Maybe I think that that's probably kind of like in that area. You don't, you would take a chance for someone else. Like you'll sacrifice your own goals. You still care about your goals, but you'll sacrifice those goals to help someone else. So you're like taking a chance, but you'll still look out for your goals. Like you didn't burn in the fire, you kind of made it out. But I think it's kind of like maybe on that level, if I'm saying that right.
Well, that kind of makes sense though too, that you're willing to sacrifice a little bit for their goals. And I look at it in terms of something I might be working on, maybe a back burner thing, and someone else has got something happening right now today and they need help. Well, I'm not just suddenly going to say today, I think I'm going to work on my project today because I'm going to put that before Marcia's food pantry giveaway down at the church where she needs hands. And I think that's where I look at it that, well, that makes sense, because if what I'm doing is more plotting and planning and someone needs hands on right now today, then I need to look at, well, what are my priorities? And yes, I have my goals, but it might be a timing thing. I may need to go help someone else because today is when their thing is happening, and mine may be happening 6 months from now. And so that may be the difference is, yeah, I may need to plan mine, but do I have to do it today? When I should be helping someone who's doing something today. I guess I kind of look at it that way too. I mean, that one just was one that stuck out for me because I thought, well, there had to be something that I was missing. I agree with you, Mother Trout. I get what you're saying, and I think that's kind of what you're saying too, is that you got to be willing to sacrifice a little bit for somebody else without totally putting your projects or your concerns or whatever it is somewhere else. Any other questions or thoughts about any of these? Any questions or thoughts about anything that we talked about today?
So I like the example that you gave when it came to the ministries and the certain time of the year, November, I can, decide that I no longer want to be in this role, and then someone else may want to have that role. Well, what I thought was really good about that is, you know, you're welcoming someone else for a role, but the one that's actually leaving doesn't have to feel like they've abandoned anything or feel guilty, you know, because they left that role, because you're actually rewarding them and showing the appreciation for what they've done. So I thought that was a good thing.
I thought it was one, because it was structured. You know, so a lot of times people come into a new church and they're not sure how to get involved, and
Right.
we leave it up to our yearly meeting or whatever, and we don't do there's not a lot of structure to that either. It's like, well, you'll kind of do this. Whereas this way, it's here, the people who are currently doing the positions, the committees or whatever could say, well, here's what we're doing right now. If you'd like to join us, here's some of the things we're doing. And here's some of and you could put it in writing and people can mull over the month of October, whether they want to be, but in November is when we'll kick off this whole thing. And, and decide, and it could be like, okay, I've done clothes washing ministry for 3 years and I'm done. But I don't just walk away. I'm handing it over to someone who says, I want to do this. Tell me, and there's training involved. Tell me what you've done. And you hand it off, or the committee has some consistency to it, even though one person might move on and say, okay, now I'd rather do dishwashing as opposed to clothes washing. So I'm going to be a dishwasher now. And then that way people can, to me, it's a safe way to try out different parts of a ministry ministries in a church without saying, I am committed to, I think I want to do this, but I'm not sure what it entails. I can try it for a while. If it's not quite it, then I've only committed for the year and I will try the next one next year. To me, it's sort of like someone who goes to college and says, I want to be a doctor. And they don't have any clue what it involves. And then they get there and they try their first semester of their freshman year and they're like, ooh, I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be a teacher. And then second semester, they get through one and then they go, oh no, I want to be a biophysicist, and they're just changing their major to fit what they think they want to ultimately do. And I think this offers an opportunity of structure that says, okay, you want to do this? Here's the structure of what we're asking you to do in this year is this. If it doesn't, and if you feel like that's not what you want to do, you're not making a lifelong commitment. If it's not something you felt was what you thought you had signed up for, it's not a lifelong commitment. It's okay to say, I don't want to do that anymore, if that makes sense. I think there's a way to structure it that makes sense. I also think it offers opportunities for people to know what's going on behind the scenes that they don't necessarily see when they just come on Sunday morning. And we can say, but there's some behind the scenes things that we'd like to see happen. Or it's a committee we're putting together. We don't have anybody doing this yet, but we'd like to see people do it. We'll give you some direction to do it. And if you can do this and really get this going, that would be great. I'm thinking like in terms of like the pantry that G wants to put together. That is going to take more than just one person. So someone might say, gee, I think I want to do that kind of thing. And they get involved for a year and they're really organized and they love it. And someone else says, I might want to do it. And they get in and they do it for a year and they're like, yeah, no, that's not it. That's not me. But they feel like they're a part of the behind the scenes of things that are happening in the church, and they're brought into the family a little, with a little more structure, I guess. I don't know, I kind of liked it. What did you all, besides Mother Trout, what did you all think of it? Did you like it, Pastor?
Yeah, it's actually something that I have always thought about doing, just when we had more people.
Well, yeah.
More of a, it's not so much a job fair per se, but kind of like a day when people can, you know, where the whole church is kind of like knowing this is coming and you can check out what's going on and what's available. So something similar to like a job fair type thing.
Yeah. That's what I thought. I thought, oh my gosh, it's so nice and structured, and people can say, you know, Deacon Cheryl is in charge of this. She writes up a description of what she does. You can take it home and you can read through it. If you have any questions, you can call her, you know, and you can learn as much as you know, like you said, it's like a job fair. Without the, and this is the other thing, that a lot of times people are just really, they don't know how to get involved. And they don't know when to plug in. When do I plug in? Is there a time frame? I'm here 6 months. Should I be plugging into something yet?